Welcome to AngularJS data binding tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be covering the concepts of MVC architecture and one-way data binding and two-way data binding. Angular uses the model view controller MVC architecture to front-end web applications. Under the MVC approach, the model defines the application at a data layer independent of the user interface. In Angular, models are plain JavaScript objects. The view is a visual representation of the model data. Angular allows you to use HTML as a templating language for view creation in conjunction with AngularJS directives, which we shall cover in later tutorials. The controller component is actually responsible for manipulating the model's data. In Angular applications, controllers are JavaScript functions which are registered with the application using controller method. One-way data binding. In many web applications, we would have seen one-way data binding very commonly. In one-way data binding, HTML would only require the data from the database once before displaying the web page. One-way data binding is much easier to implement and requires less code complexity. Mostly, one-way data binding can be achieved without any support from a framework. However, most applications accept input from users and the view layer needs to update based on users' interactions. There are several limitations to one-way data binding. Once the data is loaded, the view would be rendered and it would be just a static view. Even if the model changes after a few minutes later, for example using an AJAX call, view won't automatically update. So the developer would have to reset the data model, clear the HTML, and recreate the changed parts of the DOM to update the view. This might sound like minimal work for a very small web application, but once there are multiple pages with different user controls and input mechanisms, managing all the data changes by hand can easily turn out to be pretty complex process. This is where two-way data binding would be of help. So one of Angular's most well-known features is its two-way data binding between models and views. This actually avoids the model and view syncing problem. This also greatly simplifies the problem of keeping data synchronized between two application components. Two-way data binding means that when the user updates the view, the model data is automatically updated to reflect the changes. Similarly, if the controller modifies the model, the view is updated as well. This would actually reduce a lot of redundant code around the event handlers and DOM manipulation, etc. And the developer could actually focus on writing the JavaScript code more onto the business logic and also in rich user interfaces. So let's actually demonstrate this two-way data binding capability using an example. Okay, so in this example, you could actually see the HTML tag is actually having ng-app AngularJS directive, which actually suggests AngularJS that this particular web page should be loaded as an AngularJS application. And there are also two input controls which actually corresponds to the ng- model first name and last name, which is actually followed with a header having a static value of gender dash and a follow-up value within the JavaScript expression gender variable. So this gender variable actually corresponds to the follow-up to input controls, which corresponds to the ng-model, male and female. We also have another header which actually says welcome dash and also displays the full name by clubbing the first name plus last name in AngularJS expression. And the final user control here is a button with a new AngularJS directive which is ng-disabled, and this particular AngularJS expression would actually evaluate to first name dot length and last name dot length. So this actually gets to be true only when the first name and last name input controls are not empty. So in all other cases, this particular button would actually be disabled. So let's try to quickly reload this web page in browser and see how it renders. Okay, so now this displays a sample form in the web page. So let's fill out a first name and last name in these two input controls. And you could see the value is dynamically populated here. So as we are actually entering the value within these two input controls, the corresponding models are actually being updated, and which is actually in turn updating the view in a different component here. Similarly, we could also choose one of the values here, and you could see how the gender in the heading is actually being updated. And as you see here, now the sign up button is actually enabled. But if you wanted to make this field empty, you could again notice without having any additional event handler code, we are actually making this button to be disabled. So now try to clear up this field and check. So now this sign up button is again disabled. So now you could see the sign up button is again enabled as the first name and last name fields are not empty. So we almost built a form using the AngularJS extensions, which are the AngularJS directives and few JavaScript expressions within the HTML page. And we haven't written any piece of JavaScript code corresponding to event handlers or DOM manipulation, etc. So this is the beauty of two-way data binding in AngularJS. Thanks for watching.